call to order tonight's meeting, Board of Education, Dixon Unit School District 170, Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, for our regular meeting and the amended budget hearing. Roll call.
Mr. Fritz?
Here.
Mrs. Gates?
Here.
Mrs. Muldock-Hart?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Wasburn?
Here.
Mrs. White?
Here. We ask Diane Fry and Doug to get this together to lead us tonight.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I now declare the budget hearing open at
6:01.
the fiscal year 25 amended budget has been on display and available for public viewing for the past 30 days as required by law. Any questions or comments?
I'm happy to provide a short summary. Just wanted to give, first of all, the total deficit budget is $2.8 million. I do want you to remember a couple of things. Even though it is a budget, our goal with the budget is not to create an actual AFR. That's what the auditors will do with the exact numbers. So revenues are still understated and expenses are still overstated. With that, I provided you a memo that kind of outlines various differences between the original adopted budget and the amended budget that I provided you at your table tonight. There were a few versions, and this is the latest one that we'll be asking you to actually approve tonight. It's pretty close to the one that you were provided within Board Book. Just to kind of a few reminders to a couple of things, I would remember that as we gain access to grant funding throughout the course of the year, the revenue increases with grant funding, but so do the expenses as well. In order to actually receive the budget, we actually receive the revenue, we have to actually spend the dollars. I would also encourage you, I wanted to bring a few key points to light. First of all, we do have a $700,000 prepaid expense reserve. So when you look at the ed fund and you see the deficit balance, that number actually has an additional $700,000 of expense that WIPFLE has been made aware of. They will be establishing a prepaid expense which will impact what the overall deficit within the ed fund is. Those funds will actually be paid back to us at some point in time in FY26. LCSEA has a similar scenario taking place. We've seen LCSEA's cash reserve balance grow over the last couple of years. And again, in working with WIPFLE, I'm making a prediction that there is a prepaid expense amount there of at least $500,000. Again, that is within the budget as expense, but when the AFR comes around, I do believe that that number will be reduced by those items. In addition to that, if you look at the cash page on the budget, which is actually like the third and fourth page, you probably don't really need to look at it. I can just kind of tell you what it is. That thing's not always really easy to navigate. We are required to make sure that the numbers actually work. And what I mean by that is on the cash page, you can't actually have a negative cash balance. You can't have less than zero, in other words. So on the budget page, for ISB to accept it, I had to put in place a working cash loan to transportation. We actually won't do the loan. We will wait for the AFR and see what the actual dollar amount comes out to be. Then at that point in time, we will establish a plan for how we will reduce that reserve deficit at some point in time. So just so you know that that is on there. I also provided you with kind of what is the DPS story, because sometimes I think we forget where we were and where we're coming from and where we're going. I do want to remind you that prior to my arrival here in 2020, Dave Blackburn had to actually take down investments to cover payroll. We have not had to do that and are not in any way, shape, or form close to doing that. In 2019, there was a $600,000 working cash loan to transportation. We had to make that permanent a couple of years ago because there was just no way for transportation to actually pay that money back. I say that because transportation is always a struggle and will continue to be a struggle. Additionally, since I have been here, our enrollment has decreased by over 400 students. The exact number is somewhere around 13%. In addition to that, our special ed population has increased to over 6% of the state average. Those are current numbers. And I tell you that because there's an underlying theme here that we are not the same district we were 10 years ago, and we are not going to be the same district 10 years from now. And I would even argue that our community is not going to be the same community it was. When you look out there at what is happening by the interstate and all of the different projects that the city is working through, you see these positive impacts taking place. The other point I wanted to make is why now? And the only reason we haven't been dealing with these issues for the last 5 or 6 years is because over the last 5 or 6 years, the federal government and the state government gave us $16 million that we will never get again. That money came to us in the area of ESSER funding as well as in additional CPPRT payments that should not have been paid to us, even though they did. We did some really great things with those things, and this is where I look at our budget and I say it's okay because I'm looking at it as glass half full. We renovated our CTE, we opened Dempsey, we put the majority of that money in the bank, given the fact that we have $24 million in the bank right now at the end of the year, and over the next 4 months, we're going to get $25 million more in tax levy revenue. And I say that because cash reserves are strong and positive, and everyone sitting here should be credited with that. In addition to that, I did provide for you a SWOT analysis. I would say that this is a small portion of our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But I did want you to see that there are good and there are bad, and there are opportunities for us, but there are also things that are really threatening this district. A couple of things that I'd just like to highlight. We have strong cash reserves for health, life, safety, as well as a continuing growing county facility sales tax revenue to help us do our facility projects that we're doing. The weakness is that we will have a deficit budget again next year. And we do have to solve that problem because eventually the reserve money goes away. If you keep spending more than you have, it'll be gone. And we now need to develop a plan for how we're going to do that. We have a lot of opportunities as it relates to health insurance, which is one of our ballooning costs. To give you a general idea, our health insurance costs hit $6.5 million this year. They were actually higher than that. That's less the employee contribution. But we can already predict, because we're fully insured, that our health insurance costs won't grow next year. We will stay at about $6.4 million, assuming the same people are on the plan that are on it right now. And again, I can't really make that prediction. In addition to that, probably our biggest opportunity that we have is to increase the enrollment at Dempsey. And it's not just from a financial perspective that's an opportunity. It's because of the opportunities it provides for kids and their needs and the programming that we can create around them. Some of the threats that I want you to be aware of, we're obviously hearing a lot about the federal government and the spending plan that is being put in place. Previous years' spending coming out of the federal government was $6.5 billion. The starting point of the new administration's budget was $2 billion. Now we know that they're in the negotiation process and those numbers are going to come together, but it is fair to say, and we have to assume, that funding will not be at the same level, and it will impact us here at a local level. Last year, in FY25, we received $117,000 in Title II. Right now, Title II has been cut across the entire state. It is a federal program, and every single state has $0 in their grant application now at that time. Title II is for reduction of class size and actually pays for one of our staff members, and some other things, of course. But right now, that staff member will return without a funding source to pay for their salary and their benefits. So just to kind of make you aware that these are some of the things that are happening around us, and we'll be continuing to monitor those. So the next question is, where do we go? What are we going to do? Well, from kind of a general perspective, come next August, kids are gonna get on the bus. They're gonna come to school, they're gonna learn, we're gonna give them breakfast, lunch, and they're gonna get on the bus, and they're gonna go home, and it's gonna be great, and it's gonna be fun. But we are going to have to do a comprehensive analysis of every aspect of how we do business here in this district. Whether that's salaries, staffing, insurance, procurement practices, third-party contracts, services that we provide, programs that we provide for kids, curriculums that we're offering, and how we're going to continue to do those curriculums. We'll also be doing a 3 to 5 year projection, as well as a comparative analysis using open source data through our frontline portal and the data that they provide as districts across the state of Illinois, so that we can establish an understanding of how we compare to others who are in a similar boat to us. People with 2,400 students, people that are in unit districts, that are rural, that have similar free and reduced lunch balances that we do, that have similar special education populations. I am happy to answer any questions. Rattling off a bunch of numbers I don't think would really help you all that much. However, I did want you to see and hear the story as to how we're going to be moving forward.
Mark, it's not really about this budget, but as I remember, you told the board that our rate would go down for the 2024 taxes that were due right now. But actually, our rate is the only one on the tax bill that went up in the school districts.
So our tax rate did go up by, I want to say, 3 cents or something like that.
It would be a percentage, but
What's that?
it'd be a percentage, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, I always used, went up to, it went up to like 4.92% or whatever it is, as opposed to, it used to be, it was 4.88, sorry. Yeah, it did go up. Again, it went up because of the bond issuance. When we issue bonds, they do try to predict whether or not it's going to impact our tax rate. The whole point to issuing the bonds is to capture the tax rate that we had previously. That is always an estimate given the equalized assessed value of, which is an estimate. We never quite know exactly what the equalized assessed value is going to be. What we assessed is we assessed our legislative rate against the value of the property. We aren't the ones, we did not necessarily raise it. It's as a result of the working cash issuance.
But you had thought that it was going to go down.
We were predicting that it was going to be, or at least stay, but it did go up a little bit, yes.
How much greater is this budget than last year's, percentage-wise?
You know what, I don't know. I did not look at that number, but I can get it for you. I can certainly take a look at that. I would also say that this, because of the $16 million that they threw at us, it is very difficult to look at our budgets, really at anybody's budget, because everybody spent way more money than they would have spent. I mean, we received over $8 million in ESSER funding that we spent. We had to spend it. Like, that's why we spent it, right? But that's $8 million you would have never spent. So if you look at our budgets over the last 2 or 3 years, they have these additional amounts that got added into them that we wouldn't have had previously. So yes, when you look at this total budget, which is roughly, 49 million in expense, there won't be any ESSER funding next year. So like there won't be these big balloon payments that are going into that as part of it. So you will see that reduction in those expenses. It doesn't mean that we won't have other expenses that go up. It just means that those bigger grant parts won't be there.
Any other questions or comments? There being no questions,
Sorry, just to,
Okay.
appreciate the in-depth description of everything. Of course, never like to see a budget that's we're spending more than what we're bringing in, but you make it super clear exactly why, and it all makes sense to me.
anything else? There being no questions or comments concerning the fiscal year 25 amended budget, is there a motion to declare the hearing closed at
6:16.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavon Park?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. The regular meeting will now begin at
6:16.
16. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda, which consists of regular meeting minutes, the DPS and LCSEA treasurer's report and monthly bills, balance sheet and monthly expense report, enrollment and discipline report, staff development report, monthly website, and social media activity.
There's nothing unusual about that.
I need a motion and a second.
Second.
Who was the, I'm sorry, who was the first? I'll move it.
Motion and second. Are there any board questions? Roll call?
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavon Park?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We have no one here for citizens' agenda, and we've received no correspondence. We'll start with action items. I need a motion that the board approve the fiscal year 25 amended budget as presented in our packet.
So moved. Second.
Just a couple of final comments. All of the rules related to the budget have been followed. There was notification in the paper. It's been on file here in the district office. It's been posted to our website, and all of the different things that are supposed to happen did happen as part of the process.
Thank you. Roll call?
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavon Park?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the budget spending resolution as presented in our packet.
So moved.
Second.
And this is a yearly agenda item that we do. It is designed, as you know, we won't approve an FY26 budget until September, but we do have bills to pay, and basically this resolution gives us the authority to make payments as needed over the next couple of months while we organize next year.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Lavon Park?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the transportation contract extension with Illinois Central Bus LLC as presented.
So moved.
Second.
You have a contract in front of you, as we've talked all year long. Transportation has and will continue to be a budget concern. We have negotiated with Illinois Central the contract that you have in front of you, which is a $700,000 savings, as well as a 4% increase year over year for the next 6 years. The contract, just so you know, they're providing us savings, but it does come at a level of diminished service. We currently pay for 24 routes. We will only be paying for 18. We've only been using 18. As well as, of course, our special education routes. We will be reducing the number of bus monitors that are being used, simply in an effort to live within our means. I will also tell you that even though there's a $700,000 reduction, we still, that won't make it, just so you know. So what I offer to you tonight is I think this is a great option for us for the next 6 years. It will meet our needs. I do not see our student population decreasing beyond a point where we would need to make reductions. However, there is a clause in there that allows us to negotiate reductions if we have a reduction in enrollment. The other thing I would say is that if for some reason you chose not to approve this contract, because I don't like that it's 6 years, a lot can happen in 6 years, that's probably the bad part. What would end up happening is we do have a year left on our contract with Illinois Central. It would be a 6.2% increase over what we're paying now, as opposed to a $700,000 reduction. We would go to bid. I would highly doubt the bids would be as good as this. And when they aren't, you would decline those bids, and then we would be in the bus business. We would then at that point be forced to get our own fleet, hire our own drivers, and while that comes at a level of flexibility, it comes at, and it can come at a variety of cost savings measures, it also comes at a lot of other concerns and issues. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions in regards to the contract.
When you say we're gonna reduce the amount of aides on the bus or monitors on the bus, you're gonna always add those back in if needed, right?
If we needed to, yes. So right now, the contract will still hold special ed monitors on all special ed routes. We've been using monitors on every route across the district, and it's just not cost feasible. We are keeping some of them that we will use for targeted routes where we know we have issues.
Thank you.
I don't like looking back too much and asking, but you said we're going down from 24 routes to 18, and we were really only using 18.
Yes, so.
The short question is like, why were we paying for 24 when we weren't using 24?
Because our contract, as well as the contract in front of you, they get 55% of any canceled route. So you have 24 routes, you're not using 6 of them, you're saving 45% of those costs. Or you pay 100% of them and use them in some manner. We chose to save that money over the last couple of years.
Okay, so we were paying only 55%.
We were only paying 55%. And the reduction of those routes really comes from the reduction of students.
Okay.
And comes from the bus company doing some rerouting and combining some routes and things like that. That's where that comes from.
Cool. Makes sense.
Any other question? Roll call.
Mrs. LeBlanc Burks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve of the permanent transfer of working cash fund interest as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So as part of our yearly process, we have traditionally transferred the working cash interest for the year, which is roughly $180,000, to our most needy fund. In this case, I have determined that to be transportation, to help us minimize what could ultimately be a loan or working cash transfer later on. This is in the budget you just approved.
Roll call.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBlanc Burks?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the change of the January 2026 board meeting date as presented.
So moved.
Second.
There was a conflict with the January 21st date, so we just simply moved it to January 14th. Simple change.
Roll call.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBlanc Burks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the first reading of board policies as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So the policy committee met, I think it was June 6th, and reviewed all the updated policies. Basically, it focuses around two items. One being uniform grievance procedures specifically related to Title IX, the changes in Title IX. I put at all of your tables there a synopsis of what those changes are. It's basically in 2020, the end of the Trump's first administration, they had changed a lot of the Title IX procedures, and then toward 2024, the Biden administration had added several things to that, and now that was contested in a court case, I believe it was in Kentucky, and they have reverted back to those original 2020, to that original 2020 language. So that's what a lot of the policies are around. And then the second component is in Illinois, the ESS program, or Ensuring Success in Schools. I've also included that. That's the second page that I gave you. And it just talks about providing protection for students who are parents or expecting parents or victims of domestic or sexual violence. So policies, you know, you saw in your board packet, probably there was 95 pages in there, and they highlight the changes, and some of it's just minutia, but all of it has to be approved, and this is what we call first read.
So this will be on the action item in August as well, the second. Any questions? Roll call?
Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Mrs. Gates.
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer.
Aye.
Mrs. LeBon Parks.
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner.
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the DEA memorandum of understanding on the retirement incentive as presented in our packet.
So moved. Second.
And this document was shared with you numerous times and has been negotiated out with the DEA.
Roll call?
Mrs. Gates.
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer.
Aye.
Mrs. LeBon Parks.
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Aye.
Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner.
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the long-term substitute teacher rate for the 25-26 school year as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Long-term substitute teacher rate is $240 per day. That's based simply on the amount that's found in the first cell in the DEA contract and divided by 180.
Roll call?
Mrs. Schaefer.
Aye.
Mrs. LeBon Parks.
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Aye.
Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Mrs. Gates.
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner.
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the DUSPA memorandum of understanding on sick leave usage as presented.
So moved. Second.
This was a request that came from DESPA. Originally, they had in their contract for possibly to come late to work an hour or leave an hour early to go to various appointments. And they said that really wasn't working, wasn't feasible to actually try to schedule it that tight in their day. So they asked to move back to the regular half-day or full-day sick leave.
That's why it comes up now. That's why it came up now at this
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Roll call?
Mrs. LeBon Parks.
Aye.
Mr. Rogers.
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth.
Aye.
Mr. Fritz.
Aye.
Mrs. Gates.
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer.
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner.
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the LCSEA financial payroll management agreement for the school year 25-26 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I'll do these next three together. Each year, we approve a financial, a lease, and a memorandum of understanding with LCSEA. These are designed to outline out the roles and responsibilities of the two different entities. The dollar amounts and the information within these is the same as it has been for many, many years going forward. The question always comes up if we're going to dissolve LCSEA. These are only one-year agreements, so no matter what, LCSEA is with us this year, and these agreements will be intact for FY26.
And we have to have a vote on each one of these, we can't lump them together.
Unfortunately, no, we need to
Okay.
do them individually, so
Okay,
quick,
I'll-
quick.
Let's do it, try. Roll call.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBlanc Parks?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the LCSE lease agreement for the school year 25-26.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBlanc Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the LCSEA memorandum of understanding agreement for school year 25-26.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBlanc Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the resolution for hazardous crossing as presented.
So moved. Second.
So each year I remember Linda LeBlanc Park saying to me, what are we adding to this list?
You did say that.
So the list is the same, just to be clear. From a general perspective, what I want you to understand is we are required to approve this every single year to keep these hazardous crossings in place so that we can bus children within these areas and still be reimbursed. However, this year, we've gone out of our way to educate ourselves, let's just say, on the process by which this takes place. I've been speaking with IDOT and how these things are arranged and how we can add to it. And the board is capable of petitioning based upon a variety of data points. So the way the system works is you earn points for what an area looks like. For example, if there's no curbs and kids have to walk on the road, if there are curbs but there's no sidewalk, if there's a sidewalk and how far away from the road that is, what the volume of traffic is, what the age of the children for the crossing is. Also, you have to keep in mind that you won't get approved if there are other places for children to cross, places that are considered safe. For example, if there is a crossing guard that we have, or if there are stoplights with crosswalks, things like that, you tend to not get points for those types of areas. So if you think about, if you look at that list, you will see some that are old, very old, from when the old Lincoln School was open. Right? And you go out there and there's a railroad crossing, and those streets are kind of busy out there, and there's even some industrial area a little bit out there. Like some of those are still on there because at one time those were very big. We've kept them on there, and I would encourage us to keep them on there. So what I bring to you tonight is very simple. I am happy to do the analysis and the application and the petition to see if we can get anything approved. Looking at the list, some of the areas that I would encourage maybe we consider would be up Galena Avenue as you kind of get near, maybe as you start getting closer up to where the old Kentucky Fried Chicken used to be, where the Ace Hardware is, there's no stoplights there. And those children could have to cross over to Washington School. That might be an area that we might want to consider. But like the downtown area near the high school, and remember, you gotta be within 1.5 miles. It doesn't matter if it's outside 1.5 miles, we bus those children anyway. If you get kind of in that downtown area by the high school, well, you have so many you have so many crosswalks and stoplights and opportunities for kids to cross safely, you're probably not gonna get a lot of those crossings approved because of that. And because the high school age children you receive less points for, apparently they're more responsible at walking to school. That's why you also see, so like for example, we have a crossing guard at the other end of Galena by the RV dealership there, the four-wheelers and stuff like that. We have a crossing guard there, because that's within a mile and a half of Reagan School. I've actually been having a bus pick those kids up and allowing them to jump on the bus anyway. In the past, Karen has arranged for some of that. But having a crossing guard there actually eliminates that as a hazardous crossing location. So again, I am happy to do the study and analysis and count the cars and everything that goes along with it. If you have a location or an area that you'd like us to try, and we can get those, see if IDOT will approve.
Mark, what happens when we put something on the list? Is there?
So we would then be allowed to bus those kids, and we would still get reimbursed. So you don't get reimbursed if they live inside a mile and a half. So for us, it's a little tricky, because I can live more than a mile and a half from my school, but my bus might be a shuttle. So I might live across the street from Jefferson, but my school is Reagan-Madison. I can walk over to Jefferson and I get bused on the shuttle over in the morning, as opposed to a bus coming and picking up a group of kids that goes directly to Reagan. That's where a lot of times we get, it's a very efficient system, it's a very good system, it's a cost-effective system, but that's where some of these places for hazardous crossing may not come into play. Because again, the example I gave kind of by the Kentucky Fried Chicken, well, that's probably within a mile and a half of Jefferson. So I can pick up, I don't have to cross, I can jump on a shuttle to another location that I might be a mile and a half away from.
Were there other locations, Linda, that you had thought about?
It was mainly Galena.
By Reagan there, right? But
Because you can work with Mark if,
Yeah, so Galena Avenue over there by Reagan, like, I would probably recommend that, because I will say this, we don't always have a crossing guard. It's, sometimes they're not there, right? They're sick, they're not there.
and people don't care.
Right, and what since the construction, there is a higher volume of traffic out there. They're moving pretty good, there's a lot more construction trucks. So again, if I was gonna make a couple of recommendations, it would be that location, and again, up on the north side, up by Galena Avenue. One of those hazardous crossings is actually right on the other side of Ken Nelson. So, like, if you look at that street, it's that Ken Nelson kind of as it curves around there, if you're heading out towards the prison, like, that's one of them. So, there are some options there are some locations. So what I'm asking you tonight is, I do need you to approve the resolution in a vote, but I also want you to know, I'm happy to, as a starting point, why don't I do the study on those two locations, and if something else comes to you that you'd like to maybe consider, please feel free to let Margot know, and we'll move forward with that.
thanks for exploring that, for like, the procedure and all.
Yeah, can we just let you know at this time of those things to look at, or would you like us to let you know later?
Whenever you like, whatever. Yeah, I'm happy to write it down now, or if you want to give me shoot me an email or whatever later, later time.
No, those are fine.
I think we start with the two.
Yeah.
I can start with those two
Yes.
as, you know.
Why not?
Okay, great.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. McGough?
Aye.
Mr. Radford?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Whitman?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the revised job description for the secretary to the activities director as presented.
So moved.
Second.
So I'm going to explain N and O together because basically we have flipping of schedules for the activities secretary and the guidance office secretary. The guidance office secretary is usually throughout the summer. She's going to move back to where she's not going to be working through the summer, whereas the activities secretary is going to be adding those extra days to her schedule. A good component of that you can see in the job descriptions, the different duties that they have added and responsibilities. One being is directly working with me. It's the swap schedule for the students that work through the district throughout the summer, helping maintenance and our custodial teams with various jobs. And that is the scheduling of that, contacting students, letting them know, hey, you didn't show up today to help clean lockers or pick gum off desks, that sort of thing. That's part of the swap duties, and that goes all summer long. So that's basic explanation of both N and O together.
Any questions? Roll call?
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBonkart?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. And so, we need a motion that the board approves the revised job description for the guidance secretary as well in Dixon High School.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mrs. LeBonkart?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Lambert?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board casts votes for the Northwest Illinois Association District Administrator and School Board Member as presented in our packet.
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Wagner?
Motion and second.
So in your packet, yeah, you see a letter asking for the board to vote on this. It's not much of a vote, it's just one person for each office. So if that's something you want to do, you can certainly circle those names and send it back.
And just to educate me, this Northwest Illinois Association, I see this is it's a special ed co-op?
They, yeah, well, it's regional, yeah, special education, probably serving those counties, yeah.
Okay. LCSEA has some relationship with this organization, or do we work with NIA and some?
We have, oh, that's a good question. Straightforward with you, this is a new one to me.
Cool,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
And I don't remember this coming up before either, but
Now you look at the map, and they have LCSEA on the map as part of the NIA, so, yeah. I would assume we fall under that.
and they have a school board member on this board, not an LCSEA board member.
Correct.
Okay. So that's something I was not aware of.
School board member at a Byron.
Yeah, so maybe that's a question to take back to either Karina or Margot or something, or just for my educated, Lisa, what is NIA, what do we have to do with them, and why do we?
I can do that.
Mhm. Roll call.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBonkart?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve a transitional kindergarten program for the 25-26 school year as presented.
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
So this is something that's pretty exciting, and I'm gonna ask Kelly Glenn to come up here. Kelly and Margot have been working on this a lot to get this into place. This is addressing the needs of specifically our kids coming in at the beginning of their school career, kindergartners that may not be ready for the kindergarten classroom, and just giving them an environment where they can better be prepared for regular kindergarten. And Kelly can kind of lay out the whole plan for it.
Yeah, just the past couple of years, we've noticed that some kids are coming into kindergarten and the kindergarten expectations are really high. They've really changed in the past several years. Our curriculum is pretty rigorous and there isn't a lot of time for us to really slow down and focus on some of the social skills that a lot of these kids, especially our younger ones, some of them don't turn 5 until after school starts. So we, as a kindergarten team, brainstormed kind of what we would want this to look like. Also, Margot and I talked to a couple other districts. Quincy was the one, and they've had this program for, I think it was more than 5 years. So we talked to them about kind of how they identified kids. They've been doing it for a while, so they really had a system down. So this year we did kindergarten screenings, and we went to all the local daycares in Dixon and preschools. And screened them there, and their teachers also did the DECA, which is a social emotional screener. So we looked at the ISEL, which is the academics, the DECA, which is social emotional, and then we spoke with the teachers too. Especially at our preschool program, we had some teacher recommendations of kids that just weren't quite ready for the demands of kindergarten. And so this program will still focus on academics, but we're thinking the first about half of the year focus more on preschool or like kindergarten pre-readiness skills, and then move into the letters, letter sounds, letter names. So we're hoping that they'll get through like first maybe half of kindergarten at the most, maybe first quarter, second quarter. So they'll just be able to focus more on these skills. So the hope is then the next year they will be in traditional kindergarten, so regular kindergarten, but they hopefully will be a leader because they've already learned all the beginning of the year sounds, letters, names, letter sounds, and just so that the kids feel more ready academically and then also socially too. So it'll be more play-based. So talking with the teacher that is going to do it, just having centers, but having like a must-do task that they have to do at the centers, and then letting them play more and explore and just practice those social skills with their actual peers too. And they will still be using the second step curriculum that our kindergarten uses. We have this other program, it's called My Day in K, which teaches the kids a lot of like cutting skills and gluing, just a lot of pre-academic readiness skills to get them ready for the demands of kindergarten.
So you obviously can't get every child screened before you're gonna have
Correct,
some surprises.
yes.
So if there's a child who starts kindergarten, then can you say, this might be a better.
Yes, and I think that's gonna happen because, you know, we do everything we can to catch all of them, but there still will be some kids that maybe didn't have preschool or move into the district. So we don't want this class to be above 15, and we're hoping to start the year like 10 or 12. So there'll be space for kids that move in or kids that we start and we're like, okay, they're struggling with those social skills, and so they're not ready to learn the academics yet. And then on the flip side, if the students are in the transitional kindergarten and we were thinking like parent-teacher conference time, if they're showing like they're really catching on, they're really doing well, then that would be a good time to transition them out into a regular kindergarten. So it's still, just because you're in it doesn't mean you have to stay in it, and because you're not doesn't mean you can't come in. So we're trying to we want to have, qualifications to be in the program, but still be flexible with when the kids come and just see, how they do.
I love it.
It sounds great.
We're pretty excited. I think it'll be a good thing for just that small group of kids because they cannot go to our Preschool for All program if they turn 5 before September 1st. So, and that's just part of the grant, that's one of the rules. So we really didn't have a program for those kids. They were just put into kindergarten because that's what the policy was.
So the parents are aware, or will be aware, that it's a 2-year
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
I mean,
so I've been talking
unless there's
to,
some flexibility.
Yes. And so I've been talking to them and just explaining the whole, like what we're picturing. We'll start in TK is what we're calling it, and then the second year being a traditional kindergarten. So TK will still be a full day, because that's a barrier for some parents. If it's not a full day, then they don't have somewhere else for their kids to go, which I understand. Both me and my husband work, that would be really hard to figure out. So it is full day, and then in busing, this will have lunch, this will have PE and recess, they'll have all of those things. But then then they will do another year of kindergarten in a traditional classroom. So I've been in contact with some parents. I was waiting until after this meeting then to mail home just the overview so that they can read it, because it's a big decision for parents to make. So I was calling and just talking them through it, saying, you don't have to decide today. I will call back in a couple weeks, mail you home this information so you can look at it.
And if they say no?
They say no, then they'll be in a traditional kindergarten, and these kids will still be on our radar, and we can meet on them for MTSS and just kind of go from there, see what supports they need. We'll still have title, and if they need an evaluation, then we can go from there too.
There's a nap component
Yeah,
to
yes.
this.
Yes, there is. They are gonna have a rest time. Says about 25 minutes, and I know that was a question, I think, from Melissa, but we really believe that if kids come to school and they're sleeping, we really let them sleep, because something's going on that they might not be able to sleep at home, or they didn't get good sleep the night before, and you can't be ready to learn if you're falling asleep at school, so.
And in a regular kindergarten class now, there isn't.
No, there is no nap time, no. They'll do like after, a lot of kindergarten classes have recess like right after lunch, so sometimes they'll come back in and have like a 5-10 minute just kind of cool down time, but nothing like this, like they'll actually lay down, rest, so. Yeah,
Well, I really applaud you and your team and
thank you.
for getting this together this year.
Yeah, we think
So
we're really
ready to
excited.
go in August with it.
Yeah, so, thank you for your support, and Doug and Margot too, for finding the other districts that we could talk to. That was very helpful to just kind of chat with them and see what they've done.
And we had a teacher that was willing to make this move.
Yep, so one of our current kindergarten teachers is going to do the transitional kindergarten. So that was nice, because she knows, you know, what the kids are expected to know when they come in that first day of kindergarten, so she has that big picture view, which will be really good.
Kelly, how will, I mean, obviously, you have it not designated for students who have behavior issues, obviously.
Yes.
How is going to be a separation behind behavior issues and social emotional skills? That, I mean, it's very, I use the word subjective, but
Yeah.
be a
No,
fine
it
line
is.
between a kiddo that's not social emotional, ready to be in kindergarten class, that may have behavior issues that are back behind that, to put them in a TK class
Yeah,
that are probably better suited for them. Like, how is that?
yeah, and that's
I mean,
gonna
a
be tough.
conversation with the parents, obviously,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's very, the parent would have to agree, correct? To say, okay, your kiddo is not socially, emotionally ready for kindergarten, I think they're better off for TK.
Yeah, so the parent will have to give us permission to do that,
Okay.
because essentially we're saying, you know, they're gonna do kindergarten twice.
Mhm.
Behaviors, we're trying to, I mean, like you said, it's very subjective.
Mhm.
We don't want kids who have a lot of big behaviors in the class, because then that will take a lot away from the other kids, and they won't be able to focus on those skills they're trying to. If a kid does have a lot of big behaviors, then we feel like our traditional MTSS, you know, trying to work with them, maybe they need an evaluation, maybe they need check-in, check-out. Not that we can't do check-in, check-out in TK, but they might need more supports, like an evaluation would give them, more so than the transitional kindergarten.
And even the TKs, they would start building a potentially IEP then as they go into kindergarten?
No, we're
No,
hoping,
okay.
like, for TK, that then they wouldn't need an IEP. So
Okay.
catching, you know, building those skills up when they're younger, so that when they come to the regular kindergarten, they're ready to learn the academic skills. Their social skills are stronger, so they can learn the academic skills. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So there will not be students at TK who have IEPs. If they have IEPs already, then they'll be in a traditional class with
Okay.
the supports that they need there.
Gotcha.
Because our TK teacher isn't a special ed teacher, so it would make it a little difficult there.
But these are those kids that fall through the cracks.
Yeah, and that's what we're
Traditionally.
looking for, yeah, just kids who just aren't quite, their maturity isn't quite there, right? It might be hard for them to sit, like, they're just little, right? They're just young, they wanna get up, they wanna explore. It's hard for them to sit and listen to a full lesson. So having it be more play-based, we're hoping that then they'll be able to get up and move and those behaviors that you might see from having to sit and listen to a whole lesson will lessen.
But should they need to be evaluated, I mean, if it comes to that, they will be
Yeah.
evaluated for,
And if they did
Other
qualify,
services.
then we would, well, we'd have to see, how it works, but we'd probably put them in a traditional classroom, so they
with
could,
support.
yeah, work with a special ed teacher or para if they need it. So it'll be a learning year for sure, and, on that overview, I know it said year 1 and year 2, so next year, we would like to do, it's actually our preschool screening tool, it's called the Dial, and that's what the Quincy School District used, and, that was their first screen, and then they also did the ISO, which what we use. So we wanna do both next year. This year, we just didn't have access to all those kids that go to other, preschools and daycares, but next year, if we know that's what we're looking for, then we can set up a time to do that with them.
So it seems like one thing this means is that you're gonna have a smaller kindergarten class this year, because you've got these 10 to 15 kids who are gonna be pulled out of there. I'm just trying to think of other weird, like that throws the makes for a small kindergarten class overall.
Well,
As they're gonna-
but it's not an additional class, so we still have the 8 classes, and one of the 8 will be TK. So that class will be a little smaller, so the 7 traditional classes might be a little bigger.
Right, okay.
Which, last year we had, none of our classes had more than 18, so we had pretty small classes last year.
But it will make the class sizes for those other 7 a little larger, because this one's gonna be a little smaller.
It could, yes.
But then these kids, these 15 are gonna go to kindergarten the next year.
Next year, yes.
So they'll be,
So that's 15, like, extra kids,
yeah, but the kids were at the class of, I don't know, we're probably talking about the class of 2030 or something here at this point, but that group will be a little smaller, that cohort, goes in kindergarten next year and then start to move through.
Yeah. So then as you go on, I guess it'll just
I
kind
have
of.
no idea.
It's only for the math brain, don't you? Yeah.
I didn't think that through. Okay, and this is all like, just thinking about funding or other kinds of, this is just we're kind of extending their overall DPS career by a year, right?
Yeah.
And does that have other weird implications of something, or is it just, okay, now we've got kids who are gonna be here for 14 years instead of 13?
And parents I've talked to, they said, well, I don't want my kid to be behind. That's what they're worried about.
Right.
And I've explained to them, I don't see it that way. I see it as them spending another year getting those social skills ready for them to come into kindergarten so that they're academically ready to learn, or more ready than they would have been starting this year.
More
And-
confident.
Yeah, exactly, more confident, a whole year older. I mean, we see a huge difference, from just kindergarten to first grade, so.
So are they worried about, on the other end, how old they are when they're seniors?
Yeah, some of them, yeah, so.
But again, I would use that same argument, that, they'll be more confident and, more mature, more
Yes,
ready for
yes.
those big decisions in high school
Yeah,
even.
yeah,
Maybe,
yeah,
possibly.
that's the hope, right?
Yeah.
Back in the day, but you're held back. Kindergarten, if you weren't mature enough, you didn't have an option, you were held back.
And that could happen if the
I
parent
mean-
chooses not for them to go
Correct.
to transitional
Right,
kindergarten, they could be held back
That's
too,
still-
so.
Yeah.
Just trying to be proactive and make some changes to help these kids.
In the long run, as an adult, does it really matter
Yeah.
whether you're 18,
Yeah.
17, 18, or 19 when you graduate from high school?
Yeah.
And if you could convey that maybe.
Yeah, and
that
some of these kids might turn 18 like at the beginning, when they're senior high school, at the beginning of the year, so.
Yeah. And, that in the long run, does that really matter? But whether that kid's confident all the way along does
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, and I've told the parents it is a big decision and you know your kid best, so, I'm looking at the information that I have and suggesting what I think, would be best, but you know your kid best and I'm willing to talk to you and I want them to think about it, because it is a big decision.
Well, if you talk to them like you're talking to us, that's
You're just fine.
what they need.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we're excited, so.
Really appreciate your creativity and flexibility and thinking about weird stuff.
Trying to, take some of the troubles we had last year and just make changes to try to make things better, because I think, if you do everything the same every year, you're just gonna have the same problems, and
Thank
so
you.
I'm always willing to be creative, so anyone ever has any ideas, don't be afraid to do it.
It's a great idea.
And it's, we're trying to give these kids success,
Yeah, yes.
make them successful all along the way, so.
Yes, yeah. really set them up for success, and last year, we had some kids that were struggling, talking to their parents, and that's what I'd say, like, I don't want them to not like school in kindergarten. Like, that should not be, what, your kid doesn't wanna come to school in kindergarten, this should be the time they come to school, they have fun, they're learning what school is, and if it's that much of a struggle, like, we have to figure something out, so.
And you're the professional, and I would think that some of those parents would be at their wits' end too.
Yeah, yes,
And kind of looking to you for guidance.
yeah,
What's gonna work best for my kid.
yeah, and they've all been super kind and just, asking questions, and that's why I wanted to call them as soon as I could and just and then we'll mail home this information so they can read it and think about it, so.
But it's not a punishment.
No,
it's
and
not a
I've said that
punishment,
too, I'm like,
right.
this is not a punishment.
Right,
This is
right.
just, looking at the information I have, just something I want you to think about that we think would be really great for your child.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, after that, roll call.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor? Aye. Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 Washington Elementary School Student Handbook as recommended by district administration.
So moved.
Second.
So this is the time of year that we do all these handbooks, and that's actually R through W here. And
But we have to vote separately.
we have to vote separately, yes, but if you look at the one-pagers, they are all the same because we get this from the Illinois Principals Association Model Handbook. And that's how we keep up with the updates to all the handbooks. With that being said though, I would always encourage you to look through the handbooks, and if you have questions, or if you have questions about the upcoming changes, then certainly ask the principals. That's why they're here tonight, but I'm not going to go through the same spiel 5 times. And we will have Thomas J. Dempsey's handbook in August, actually. So this is all the other buildings. So, yeah.
Are there any questions? Roll call.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 Jefferson Elementary School Student Handbook as recommended.
Second.
Seeing no questions, roll call.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 Madison School Student Handbook as recommended.
So moved. Second.
And roll call.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth? Aye. Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 Reagan Middle School Student Handbook as recommended by district administration.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments about Reagan's? Okay. No comments about Reagan's.
Well, it's the exact same one-page sheet as well, with the same updates, so, yeah.
Roll call.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 Dixon High School Student Handbook as recommended.
So moved.
Second.
Again, you've got the synopsis and roll call.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion that the board approve the 25-26 DHS Athletic Handbook as recommended by district administration.
So moved. That one, I don't know if, Jared, do you have any thoughts you need to share?
In terms of our, no, Roger did the same thing with Press Plus, just went through, and looked for any changes that we need to make, but, yeah.
Okay.
Need a second?
And did we have a motion? I'm sorry.
Yes. I'll second.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. Aye. We need a motion that we approve the school improvement plan for Madison School.
So moved. Second.
So our principals put together their school improvement plans, and they're patterned after the overall district improvement plan. And Mr. Sable can give you any answers that you might have for questions on Madison's improvement plan.
Roll call.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion to approve the school improvement plan for Jefferson School as recommended by school administration.
So moved.
Second.
Same, again, this is, again, patterned after the district plan. Crystal and her team worked on this, and they put a few updates in here. If you have any questions, feel free to ask Crystal.
Roll call.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Longcor?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Prince?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. We need a motion to approve the district improvement plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
And although you've got it now, this is something we'll be discussing at the retreat too.
Was there a second?
Yeah.
I do want to give a little update on the district improvement plan. There's a few changes to this. If you look at district goal number 1 in action D, it says by the end of 25-26 school year, all K teachers will be provided professional development from Renaissance on EduClimber multi-tiered systems of support intervention monitoring platform. This is, I've brought up this before, this is part of our MTSS tracking approach, and we've gone from using Embrace to this now, and we've done a whole year of onboarding, and we've had some folks trained in it, but we also have to get teachers at least up to speed with it, because ultimately, when it comes to them providing the interventions in the classroom for specific groups of students, we want to be able to pass that on from grade level to grade level, and that's going to be an EduClimber. There is some additional coaching that we have coming up again. You know, one of the things that our teachers talked about when I first got in the role of curriculum director was they really would appreciate if we had some extra training when we had adopted, whether it be Amplify or our Savvis and Vision. Well, we are going to continue with some Savvis and Vision training. Some coaches will be coming in again this year, and also for mid-school math, we're going to be doing the same thing there. And at the bottom of that first page, it has Action I. This is something that we have been implementing over the last several years with new employee orientation, but all new teachers will receive Renaissance STAR assessment and data training every year. All those new teachers coming in, because they are expected to administer the STAR and then look at the data of those kids at the first school improvement day in September. So that's something that we felt worthy of going to the school district improvement plan. In addition to that, you can go to Action A under District Goal 3. We want to distribute the MTSS guidebook in September and have all that in place. Mr. Campbell mentioned earlier that we were 6% over the state average with special ed. One of the things, the most important thing actually that we can do to help students before going the evaluation route is ensuring that we have a rigorous intervention process and plan. And that is going to be outlined in the MTSS guidebook. So that's all coming. Action E there mentions the transition of kindergarten. We're, like I said, we're really looking forward to that. It's good to hear the questions that you folks had tonight. That's very encouraging. So otherwise, there's a lot of items on the district improvement plan that remain the same with some slight modifications, and you can see those. Do you have any questions on the district improvement plan? Okay.
Roll call.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. LeBon Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Hi. So we will be getting the school improvement plan from Reagan and the high school in August. maybe? Okay, we move on to administrative reports.
Just to give you a couple of highlights from the business report, the first 10 to 15 pages is a variety of articles showing the trials and tribulations of the state legislature and the process that underwent. However, there is good information in there. I do hope that you have an opportunity to read through it. And as I kind of referred to earlier, there are threats out there to revenue streams and funding that we are facing, and we need to be mindful of what that looks like. In addition to in the business report, there is a document. I put this in every June and December. These are the bond payments for the year. We will be making our first bond payments on July 1st. That's interest-only payments for all of our outstanding bonds. That total is $701,000. The total for the year will be $4.2 million. Remember, those funds come out of debt service, which we levy for, as well as we set aside funds from county facility sales tax for the alternate revenue bond payments. The last thing I'd just like to bring to your attention, the last 2 pages are the insurance summary. I bring this to your attention because, as I mentioned earlier, there is a reserve balance out there that we are owed. This graph kind of highlights what that looks like and where that comes from. And that has been expensed through our ledger, and right now that balance is $724,003. So we'll be watching for those funds to come back to us. We actually received our statement as well, actually received more interest on that money than we had claims against it. So the claims now at this point are virtually gone, which makes sense when you think about a health insurance claim going through a 3 or 4 month time frame. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Mark? Thank you, Mark. Jared?
Okay, I think I have the next couple that pertain to the high school. I believe in board book or at your place, you should have a valedictorian, salutatorian discussion. I think Aaron put that in, right, Diane? Okay. We've been having these discussions for years. They date back to when Dr. Grady was there, about elimination of the valedictorian, salutatorian. I've done some research locally and kind of throughout Illinois. There seems to be a trend of moving away from that for a few different reasons. So I put together a rationale and some frequently asked questions, and just wanted to bring it to you guys and get thoughts, opinions, other questions that maybe aren't in here. This year was it seems like I could say this every year, this year was a really good example. I went into Amy Ebert's office at the end of the year. The valedictorian, salutatorian, all the way to number 5 were within 5 thousandths of a point of each other. There's not a true distinction between the number 1 in the class and the number 5 or 6 in the class this year. And one kid gets called the valedictorian, and some kids that did some really great things don't get called anything. Moving to the Latin system would be, which most of you are probably aware, that's what almost all colleges and universities use. Kind of traditional is 3.81, 3.4, and then above a 3.0, so we would just did note that probably in our graduation flyer that you guys see when you hand out diplomas and stuff. So its ability to recognize a few more kids. We would still have some students speaking at graduation, and I kind of outlined, I think, one of the ways several of our schools do it. We would take that top clump of kids once we finish the 7th semester, so that would be like going into their last semester of school, and say, hey, it's open to anybody who wants to do a speech at graduation. Put a panel together, potentially of some board members, some administrators, some teachers, and just have kind of a blind judging of some speeches and probably give a couple speeches that way, so. Thoughts, comments, concerns
What are negatives? I mean, I tried to think.
of going to this?
Yeah,
You know, I looked at it, truly, the only negative that, when I did some research, it says, you know, and you could call it a negative or a positive, is you're no longer celebrating that #1 student in the class. That was the negative that kept coming up. But I think you could also call that a positive in that you're celebrating a large group of kids in a class, yeah.
what about colleges? They don't,
It makes
Care.
no difference whatsoever. They don't care that you were the valedictorian. No offense to our school district, they don't care that you were a valedictorian.
Jared, I hate to
Dixon
tell
High
you this,
School.
but first day of orientation for me, they told us exactly how many valedictorians were in our admin.
Absolutely, that has changed, no offense.
that's
That's
a
changed
long
over time.
Yeah,
It's
I'm not-
significantly
I'm not sure
different
it
now.
has changed that much.
It has,
You know,
it has. My 2 kids have gone to colleges, we've went all kinds. And I'll give you the example. Not only do my youngest son's going to the University of Illinois, I would argue one of the better institutions in our state. It is test optional. You don't even have to give your SAT score to get into Illinois anymore. You don't have to write down, you put your GPA, but you don't give your test score. They don't ask if you were valedictorian. They don't ask what your class rank was. None of that. And that's at one of the biggest institutions in our state. Other questions, thoughts?
Did you reach out to universities at all in Northern Illinois area to ask, kind of ask that question of, do they care?
Yeah, it's not on applications. There's no way that a college would ever know if you were the valedictorian, salutatorian of your high school.
Okay.
it's just GP.
Unless you put it in your
Right, you can
narrative
tell them,
or,
right, you tell
yeah,
them.
you can tell them for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
And the question is.
but they don't ask for that.
And the question is, do they care though?
No.
Does that?
No, in my experience, they do not.
Okay.
Yep. And the reason is it's apples to oranges. Being the valedictorian of Dixon High School is significantly different than a smaller rural high school, significantly different than New Trier High School. So it's apples to oranges in when you're looking at, you know, who the #1 kid in the class was.
And there was always question and controversy about weighted classes and.
Yeah, I'm glad you
Just
brought that up, and I think one of the
valedictorian
things
is
that our counselors have noted over time is for some students, it becomes such an important title that they don't choose classes that they
That's what I
really
mean.
should.
Yeah.
They forego taking classes in a career that they might go into, and I'll use Whiteside for example. They don't go to Whiteside because they're not weighted courses. When clearly, when you're thinking about the good of the kid and getting yourself into a potential, area that you want to go into for your life, not doing those classes because there's not weighted is not,
Or
in
the
my
other,
opinion, the best.
the other way around too, that a student who's capable of AP classes
Yeah,
doesn't
absolutely.
take them because
Yep.
they're too hard, and they choose an easier class and end up being valedictorian.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's
And we see
seen
that.
it both ways.
You do. Whether a student needs a study hall or doesn't need a study hall and they choose to take one or not take one because it can have an impact on their GPA. So we definitely see that year in and year out.
So, Jared, when they march for graduation, did they get like special cords and stuff if they were?
So right now, what we've done, and I think we probably keep it this way, is what would be called summa cum laude, would still do the chords. That wouldn't change. It's 381 or higher. And then I think, like I said, what I found out from others is we would then just, in the brochure, the pamphlet, we would just, whether it's italics, bold, a star after their name, whatever it is, you could then identify all your other students that were 3.0 and above, 3.41 to 3.8.
I think that'd just be nice if we, like, using the Latin honor system is great, as long as we still give them some way to celebrate that and.
Yeah, absolutely, that wouldn't
Honored
change
by
at all.
that.
So I don't know how that's been as long as I've been here and probably way before that. Students with 3.81 or higher get yellow cords, yeah.
It's
Gold.
really like superior on, what is it, superior on?
Superior honor roll, it is, yep. Yep.
So you're thinking about just stopping it immediately with this?
No.
No, so it would be, I don't think that would be fair to the kids who have already started high school. They came in a certain way. So what I would like to do is do it with our about-to-be freshman class in August. So the kids who have already, are gonna be sophomore, junior, and seniors, we would just continue as normal, valedictorian, salutatorian. So truly, I think I might have put the year in there, as crazy as 2028, 29, or 29, 30, or something like that would be that first class
Yeah.
that it would be implemented for. Other questions?
And the other thing that comes to mind is that there's been a tradition of salutatorians and valedictorians since whoever knows how long. I always feel a little sad seeing a tradition go away that's been around for a long time, but the positives you mentioned, like not having a fixation on this one top thing, there's
Sure.
certainly some value in that, so.
I totally understand that. I think, I believe in a lot of traditions too, but on the same token, I would say, unless it was you or your child named me another valedictorian, salutatorian in the past 15 years, nobody remembers who they are. It's nice for that one kid, I think, but yeah, in the long run, nobody remembers those things.
It seems like there's more negative stress about it, like you were describing.
Yeah, that's
that
kind of-
those 5 kids were so close.
Yeah.
And to have it measured.
That's the argument I would
But
make is that.
Linda, we could have co-valedictorians or tri-valedictorians also. I mean, if they feel, the administration feels they're that close, you can have more than one.
That is true, and we just take it and extrapolate it out as far as it needs to go from the GPA point. That's what we've done, kind of historically. And like I said, this year's class was just, the top was just really, really close and really, really good. Yeah.
I see it as putting more focus on all those kids that would be Summa
Yeah.
than just one. Didn't you study how many schools in our,
I did, so I just looked, the one that I wrote was, our conference has 10 schools in it. Right now, 4 still use valedictorian, salutatorian, 6 do not. And one of the 4 is in the same process kind of that we're in of going away from it, so that it would be down to 3. And that's really where I got quite a few of these ideas just from the principals at our conference, and then locally some other schools too.
So at this point, this is an information item.
Yeah, when I talked to Margot, she didn't think it needed to be a board vote. I wanted to bring it to you guys. I certainly wanted your input and thoughts. I feel good about moving forward with this. Like I said, yes, there's always positives and negatives, pros and cons. I think the pros of going away outweigh any damage or any, pros of keeping it, I guess.
I like the idea that we're gonna give that upper class, what are they?
The Summa,
Summa
yeah.
cum laude, that they all get to have an opportunity to submit their.
So it'll be
speech if
interesting,
they
and what
wanna
I've
do
heard
that.
from other schools who do it is truthfully, I could always go back into Lumen and look at their GPAs. It's the top few kids
Right.
who end up doing the speeches and wanna get up there. And there are years certainly that the valedictorian is not comfortable going up and giving a speech too. They don't wanna do it, it's awful for them, but they usually do a pretty good job. But it gives, the top, however many students, that have 20 students all have the opportunity if they want to, to put in a speech and be the one who reads, one of the ones who reads at graduation.
Yeah, I've known a few of those and they were not comfortable doing that, and they did great.
Right,
I knew
right.
they were gonna do great, but I love the idea that we're gonna take all of those sumas and they all get
Yeah.
to have a chance
A
at
chance at
doing
least
that.
if they'd like to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Do you think you'll get consistently somebody raising their hand? and
I
saying
don't,
they'd like
I
to?
don't know, it'll be interesting to see.
And if you don't?
Well, we always have our class president we always offer, and I suppose worst case scenario, if nobody raised their hand and said they wanted to try it, I would take a look at our top 4, 5, 6 students and go to them individually and say, hey, are you interested in at least giving me a speech and
Yeah.
let me look over it and see if it's something you might wanna do? Yeah,
Somebody will want it.
somebody will
Yeah,
want to,
they-
for sure, for sure. Again, I had the next couple, the C on our item was just, wanted to highlight some attendance stuff. John, I know you're on that committee, Kathleen, are you too? And, you know, the work that you guys have been doing as a committee, and we made a really targeted, specific, I guess, attempt at the high school to improve our attendance. And on paper, I was kind of looking at it, you can look, I think you guys got, did you get the flyer too?
Yeah,
And your,
Well,
No.
from,
not in here.
oh,
but
okay, I'm
it's-
sorry, we put it out just on social media. So, last year our attendance was 89.09%, this year went to 90.63. And numbers can be tricky, and that doesn't, on paper, it doesn't seem like a ton, but it's a 1.5% jump in attendance. And so I just did some rough math, 750 kids, 7 periods a day, literally that was almost 10,000 periods, class periods in the year that a kid went this year that didn't go, and that's a 1.5% jump. My goal and part of our school improvement plan for the high school, obviously we're gonna continue this attendance work. What we've really seen, not only here, but across the state, across the country is, you know, it's not a big surprise or shock. Attendance has gone down since COVID. When kids, quote, had the option of going to school or not going to school for a while during COVID, lots of them chose not to go. And we're seeing the effects of that. So my goal would be to get us back up in that 92-93% range consistently for our attendance. So, you know, kudos to you guys that were on that committee, and then our people at the high school who worked and really tried to,
Kudos to you.
well, thank you,
Yes,
impress
very
upon
much.
not only our kids, but our families and our community, how important attending school is. Mr. Gruber, our assistant principal, just did a little thing at the end of the year, and it's not rocket science, and you know, it seems very common sense-ish, but it's true. He took grade point average for the year and your attendance rate, and guess what? There's a really strong correlation between the two. If you come to school, typically you get pretty good grades. So I think just continuing for us at the high school to, you know, to really work on that, and again, to try to get that up in the 92-93% is kind of my own personal goal.
You know off the top of your head what the numbers were like pre-COVID?
Right around that 92-93%. I went back in Lumen, we've been using Lumen for 12 years, Paul, I don't know if you know, something like that. And I could go back and do some reports. They were pretty consistently in the low, never got into the mid-90s really, but around that 92.5, 93, 93.5%. So that's what I'd like to hope to get back to. You're never gonna, you know, when you have a school of 750 kids, things happen, people are sick. You're not gonna eliminate absences, but we wanna, you know, get that rate as high as possible.
As far as numbers, and Dr. Grady, of course, was a numbers person too, but there's such a direct correlation between that percent and the percent of
Your
graduation.
graduation, that's what it is, and I tell our kids all the time, we have really great people in all of our buildings, and obviously I speak for the high school, but we have really great teachers and professionals and secretaries and custodians who care about kids, and if you come and let us, we will get you through. We will do whatever it takes to get you to pass the class, to get you to walk across the stage and get your diploma. And it is true, the numbers don't lie, if you come consistently. you
Moving
know.
that percentage up just a few points, and we figured out exactly how many kids that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
How many more children
Yep,
actually graduated. It was really pretty cool.
for sure.
If you can share that, we're really in the statistics of the
Yeah,
community.
absolutely.
That one about the GPA and the
Yeah,
attendance,
I can share it
that would
with
be
you.
great. Yeah,
Yep.
that would be great.
Yep. It doesn't have student names or anything, it's all data, so,
Okay.
yep, I can do that. Questions or anything on attendance? And then the last couple, I don't know if there'll be questions. As always, you guys get the all-conference athletes for the spring and those numbers, as well as spring sports ticket comparison. Just as a reminder, when you're looking at all-conference athletes, those are kids that finished the second semester with 3.5 or higher GPA. So that's a pretty good accomplishment for students who are juggling not only academics, but also being involved in a sport. All right, thank you guys, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jared.
There are no other committee reports.
We don't have any committees that met in this last month, do we?
No.
So
Okay. No?
we're good there. And then we had the board retreat.
Yeah,
coming up.
so,
Go ahead.
do you want to talk about it?
No, you go ahead, you're all
Right.
over.
So on July 21st, we're gonna meet at Natusa Grasslands headquarters. It's in the barn, I believe. It's in the barn. You'll get information, 10 days or so before.
Headquarters burn, yes.
Right. It's casual, we'll be going over goals. We did the agenda the other day. Goals, our board agreements, some of the things that we do every couple of years, but we need to review, even though we have some of the same members on the board. We'll review some of that. We're gonna go through it kind of quickly. We're not gonna get lost in minutia, I promise. We will review some things that we just need to review. We'll have breakfast between 8 and 9. We'll have lunch. They're offering us a tour of the grasslands and Buffalo, I think. But that's optional. It's kind of at the end, we'll do that.
You won't be riding buffalo.
It's listed from 8 to 4.
9 to 4.
9 to 4, 8:30 is
9 to 4.
breakfast
Oh, yeah,
starts
that's
right then.
breakfast, okay. And it may end sooner than that. Did I forget anything?
Sorry, is it 8:30?
Dress casual.
What time should we arrive?
Margaret said
8:30.
8:30 breakfast will start being served.
Is there anything else, Doug, that you had on your notes?
That's all for the board retreat. FOIA requests, we had
Oh,
one.
wait a minute, I'm sorry. There might be a survey and
Okay.
something else that might come to you 10 days before. And if you just kind of fill that out and bring it with you, it would save us time that day and we could go ahead and start a discussion about it. But I think, didn't she say 10 days
It's an
before?
outline of what's going to be covered.
Yeah, we'll give you
17
that.
days before.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, and then FOIA, we had one FOIA request. Since the last board meeting, it was CT Mills from Public Info Access requested a district administrative staff directory, and we've complied with that request. That's it.
Is there any need to go into executive session for personnel page? By any number? Then I will read the personnel page and then ask for a motion and a second. New hires, Melissa Galantine, lunchroom attendant at Jefferson. These are all effective for the 25-26 school year unless I state differently. Jamie Hendricks, paraprofessional at Jefferson. Adam Johnson, custodian at Dixon High School, effective June 2nd, 2025. Kiana Kraus, special ed teacher at Washington School. Kelly Nicholson, office assistant at Reagan Middle School. Rachel Oswald, office assistant at Reagan Middle School. Change in status, Candace Bykema from second grade teacher to third grade teacher at Jefferson. Gretchen Wolfer from paraprofessional at Jefferson to paraprofessional at Madison. Resignations, Heather Batson, second, third grade teacher at Dempsey Day School, effective at the end of 24-25 school year. Hannah Lakequist, paraprofessional at Jefferson, same. Retirements, Joanne Wagner, custodian at Dixon High School, effective June 30th, 2025. Mark Wyson, maintenance for the district, effective September 1, 2025. Dismissals, Salud Newman, custodian at Reagan Middle School, effective June 25, 2025. New facilitators, Shayna Engelkis, third grade facilitator. Annalie Kelly, fifth grade math facilitator. Jessica Martin Graber, fifth grade ELA facilitator. Alicia McPhillips, fourth grade ELA facilitator. Allie Nelson, fourth grade math facilitator. 24-20, I was gonna ask about that. Should that say 24-25 coaches? Or is that a misprint? Their resignations. No, 24, it says 24-25 coaches.
24-25 is correct.
Yeah, 'cause he's starting this summer, so.
Okay. Cameron Yater, assistant summer strength, half stipend. And then we have some resignations. Coaching, Miranda Dallas, assistant RMS track coach, effective immediately. Sarah Dunn, DHS vocal music director, musical, effective immediately. Ethan Fox, DHS assistant boys soccer coach, effective immediately. Simon Thorpe, DHS head girls track coach, effective immediately. 25-26 Dixon High School coaches, Jared Shaner, head football. Josh Briggle, head boys soccer. Jamie Briggle, head girls tennis. Simon Thorpe, head boys cross country. Megan Hildreth, head girls cross country. Bunyan Coker, head volleyball. Alicia McPhillips, head cheer. Mackenzie Simpson, head dance. Lee Eastman, head golf. Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mrs. Boban Parks?
Aye.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. I need a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee to determine its validity, the placement of individual students in special education programs, and other matters related to individual students, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of a particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. Roll call.
Mr. Rogers?
Aye.
Mr. Fritz?
Aye.
Mrs. Gates? Aye. Mrs. Boban Parks?
Aye.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Aye.
Mr. Wadsworth?
Aye.
Mrs. Wagner?
Aye. So there'll be no action coming out of,
Out of executive session, no action.
no action coming out of executive session.